Okay, we've got the 8-inch coil mounted on the Pulse Dive. We've got it in the box, perfectly vertical. We've got this measurement set out here, which this is a rule, so you can see that's legit numbers on there. And then we're going to test some common Australian items. So we'll start with 5 cents. Now this is the Pulse Dive at its most conservative, because when you bring it into water, because it's a non-motion burst based detector, it actually starts to load the coil up and becomes a lot more sensitive to targets, and I'll demonstrate how that works in a minute. But first we'll just go through basic air tests. Like, this is the worst you can expect in just if you're going in dry sand, this is what it'd be like. But once you go into salt water and more mineralized grounds, you'll actually start to increase the depth if it's not too mineralized to make it false. So here's 5 cents. We'll turn it on. Okay, we're looking at about 8.5 centimeters. You can do 9. You can do 9. And we've got a 10-cent coin. So we're looking at 14 centimeters there. We've got our 20 cents. 17 easy. 17 easy. 50 cents. 18.5. Our $2 coin. $13. And our $1 coin. 15. Cool. Now this is kind of your most average gold ring. It's 14K and it's about 5.6 grams. We don't get much 14K gold in Australia, but this is basically your most middle of the line ring. It's in terms of weight and carat. Easily 15. You can get it at 16. 15.5 is pretty consistent. Now we'll demonstrate what it's like when you're in salt water. When you start to load the coil up, now salt water is conductive and basically starts to load the coil up. So we'll bring it to the point where it's just not falsing, or not falsing on water, or not detecting the target in this case. So we're detecting it, and now we're not detecting it. That'll do. Now I'll do our 10 cents just for reference. Okay, we're easily getting 19 centimeters on that. So this is what the PulseDive is actually doing in salt water. 20 is possible. And we'll just do a 20-cent coin as well. Actually, we'll do the gold as well. Okay, we can technically get 25, but it's not real consistent. So 23 quite easily. 23 centimeters. And our 14K 5.7 gram ring. Ooh. See, it is picking it up, but it's not consistent, so you might not get it. Like, if you don't, I don't know, you could miss it. So 22 centimeters is quite consistent. Okay, so that's basically what salt water is doing, is it's loading the coil up to where it's not quite falsing, but it is increasing its sensitivity. Depending on how salt it is, depending on how mineralized the conditions are below of the ground, will depend on how much depth you're going to get. So we'll go on to the smaller coil now. Right, we've just put the standard coil on. I'll turn it on this time. And we'll start with 5 cents now. It's a little bit corroded, but oh well. So 7 centimeters for that target. Alright, 10 cents. $11 centimeters is possible. Yeah, 11's alright. Our 20 cents. $13.5 and 50. $14.5. Okay, $2. $10.5, and now $1 coin. 12 centimeters. Now the 14 carat 5.7 gram ring. 12.5. Okay. And now if you load the coil up a bit, look, this is not consistent, so but on a gold ring, this gold ring, 15.5 centimeters we're looking at. 16 is possible. It depends on how loaded up. Now the thing about loading the coil is the larger coil is actually going to get more loaded up because it's detecting a lot more salt water at once. The smaller coil is only detecting a little bit, so it doesn't get as loaded up, and the larger coil gets a lot more loaded up, so it's actually increasing its depth further again when it gets in salt water. Alright, so in conclusion, we're basically getting 30% extra depth with this larger coil, and in coverage, that's something I'm going to have to do another video about, and it's going to involve a bit more testing. So I want to find out what kind of footprint we're actually covering per sweep with a larger coil. But for now, this is just a general air test. It doesn't really mean much in the water, but it's definitely giving you an idea, because these pulse induction in particular, but non-motion based detectors do generally get deeper when you've taken them if you've retuned them in air or turned them on in air and then taken it into the water, they start to load up like I was talking about. So yeah, that's the interesting thing about non-motion detectors, is they're going to get deeper as they become more loaded up, unlike other detectors generally are getting worse depth, especially in salt water. But yeah, that's the interesting thing about this, and the fact that they're pulse induction. But sum it up, 30% extra depth with this larger coil. Coverage has got to be possibly double. I'm not sure. We'll have to figure that out, but a really great upgrade. This doesn't really cover everything there is to do with the coils, because there's a lot of benefits to each, pros and cons to each really. There's coverage versus you can get into cracks. If there's low visibility, like if I can't see my hands, this little coil's perfect because I just kind of like grab around the coil and I've got the thing. But this is kind of bigger and it's harder to pinpoint with, and there's lots of different like pros and cons to each one. I wouldn't like say one supersedes the other in any way, but yeah, that's basically the summary of my finds. I hope it wasn't too dry for you, and thank you for watching. Cheers.